When I came back from fishing, I found all my stuff thrown in the trash. My son's wife looked at me and said, "We don't need you anymore. Go live at the dump." I smiled, picked up my phone, and made one call. 3 days later, they were desperately looking for me all over the country. Because they finally understood what they had thrown away. I'm Earl Denton, 57 years old, retired after 32 years in construction, widower, and until about a month ago, I was living in a house I helped pay for with my own son and his wife. I saw the pile before I even turned off the engine, right there by the dumpster at the end of the driveway, my stuff. Cardboard boxes torn open, clothes spilling out onto the pavement, things scattered everywhere like someone had just tipped a truck and walked away. I sat behind the wheel for a full minute just looking at it. My hands wouldn't move. I'd been gone 3 days. A fishing trip up at Lucky Peak Reservoir, same spot I'd been going to for the better part of 20 years. Came home Sunday afternoon with a cooler full of trout and nothing heavier on my mind than what to do with the fish. I climbed out of the truck slowly. The first thing I found was the wedding photo. Me and Dorothy, 35 years ago. Frame cracked down the middle, glass split right across her face. It was sitting in the dirt next to a crushed bottle cap like it had been there for a week. Then the watch. The Timex she saved 3 months to buy me for our 10th anniversary. Face down in a puddle near the curb, I picked it up and the water ran out between my fingers. Crystal gone, hands frozen. My fishing rod, the one I'd owned for 20 years, was snapped clean in half. Tackle boxes pried open, lures scattered across the driveway mixed in with spatulas and old utility bills. My work shirts, the ones I'd worn to job sites for 32 years, were in a heap near the recycling bin. Someone had walked on them. Whoever did this wasn't in a hurry. This was deliberate. I tried the front door, key went in halfway and stopped. Lock changed. I tried my neighbor Philip's house. He cracked the door maybe 4 inches and told me he hadn't noticed anything going on over there. That was a lie. Philip has been retired for 7 years. He sits at that front window most of the day and notices everything. He just didn't want any part of whatever this was. So I pulled my old lawn chair out of the pile, set it up at the end of the driveway, and I waited. They pulled in around 7. Nolan got out of the passenger side. His wife Sheila came out already talking, her voice sharp, like she'd been rehearsing on the drive over. Nolan wouldn't look at me. I said, "Son, what is going on?" "All my stuff is on the street and the locks are changed." Sheila cut in before he got a word out. "The house is ours now. Earl Garrett handled everything. You're not needed here anymore." I looked at Nolan. "Who is Garrett?" He finally looked up just for a second. "Sheila's brother. He helped us with the refinancing." That word landed different than anything else she'd said. Refinancing. I need to back up a little. 14 years ago, Nolan and Sheila couldn't qualify for this mortgage on their own. Credit wasn't there. Income wasn't enough. Nolan called me, and I said yes without a lot of deliberation, because that's what you do. I co-signed. More than that, I went on the deed as a co-owner. We sat at a title company table, the 3 of us, and I signed papers. Every month for 14 years, I contributed to the payments. I handled repairs myself because I knew how, saved them thousands in contractor fees. The back addition, the new roof section on the garage, the deck out back, I did all of it. I kept every permit, every inspection sign-off, every receipt. Because 32 years in construction teaches you that paper is the only thing that protects you when people stop being reasonable. Dorothy used to say I was too trusting. She meant it as a gentle criticism. She wasn't wrong. She passed when I was 43. Cancer, fast and merciless. Gone in about 8 months from diagnosis. The house we'd shared felt like a building after that, not a home. When Nolan called about the mortgage 2 years later, I wasn't just helping my son. I was looking for somewhere to belong again. For the first few years, it worked. Family dinners, Nolan asking my opinion on things, the feeling of being needed. But somewhere around year 4 or 5, things started shifting in ways I kept explaining away. Fewer invitations to the table, shorter conversations. Sheila sighing when she heard me in the kitchen. By the time Garrett entered the picture, I'd already been quietly moved to the edges of a house I was still paying for. I didn't know about Garrett's involvement until that Sunday on the driveway, and when Sheila said the word refinancing, something clicked into place that I hadn't understood until that moment. I said, all right, not because I was giving up, because I needed to think, and I wasn't going to do my thinking in a driveway. I loaded what mattered into the truck. Dorothy's jewelry box, the wedding photo, my toolbox, and the accordion folder I kept in the closet with every document I'd ever signed related to that house. Then I drove to the Budget Inn off the highway and paid $52 for a room. The room was nothing. Double bed, a table by the window, a bathroom you could barely turn around in. The carpet had seen better decades. The heater rattled when it kicked on. But it was clean and quiet, and nobody was going to knock on the door and tell me I wasn't needed. I set Dorothy's jewelry box on the nightstand next to the cracked wedding photo. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the accordion folder. I went through everything slowly, the original deed, the mortgage documents from 14 years ago, my name on both, clear as day. Payment records I'd kept in a separate envelope every month for 14 years, highlighted and dated. Repair receipts. And then the building permits from the back addition, the garage roof, the deck, all pulled in my name because I was the licensed contractor of record on every one of them. And then I found something I didn't remember putting in there. It was a piece of mail still in its envelope that must have come to the house months ago and gotten mixed in with my documents when I filed things away. I opened it. It was a notice from a mortgage company I didn't recognize, addressed to me as a co-owner of the property, informing me that a refinancing application had been initiated and that my signature would be required to proceed. I read it twice. Someone had started a refinancing application on a property I co-owned without telling me, without asking me, and apparently without any intention of getting my signature. The notice had been sent as a legal requirement. It wasn't a courtesy. They had to notify me because my name was on the deed and they couldn't legally proceed without me. Garrett Wills had tried to pull equity out of a house he had no ownership stake in, using a refinancing process that required a signature he apparently planned to either forge or ignore. I sat with that for a long time. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay on top of the comforter in my clothes and stared at the ceiling and thought about the last 14 years. Not with bitterness, exactly. More like a man trying to read a map he's been holding upside down for years and finally flipping it over. Every year, Sheila got a little colder. Every year, Nolan checked out a little more. I kept telling myself it was stress, the economy, the normal friction of people living together. I made excuses the way a parent does, always finding reasons to believe the best. But looking at it from a $52 motel room with my wife's jewelry box on the nightstand, the pattern was clear. The closer that mortgage got to being paid off, the less they needed me to feel useful, and the more I became furniture. Something to work around. And then Garrett arrived. I didn't know much about Garrett Wills, except that he'd started coming around about 2 years ago. Sheila's older brother lived somewhere on the other side of the state, showed up occasionally for weekends and holidays. I'd thought he was harmless. A little loud, the kind of guy who always has an angle on something, but I hadn't paid him much attention. I was paying attention now. By 6 in the morning, I was dressed and in the truck. I found a property attorney named Clifford Hale through a Saturday listing in the local bar directory. His office was in a converted brick building 4 blocks from the Capitol, 3rd floor, the kind of place that looked like it had been doing quiet, serious work for a long time. I walked in at 9 with my folder under my arm and was sitting across from him by 9:20. Clifford Hale was a compact man in his late 50s, weekend clothes, reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. He took the folder without ceremony and went through it the way a doctor reads a chart, methodical. No expression. When he got to the deed, he stopped. Mr. Denton, your name is on this deed as a co-owner of record. It has never been removed or modified. What about the refinancing notice? He set the envelope on the desk and looked at it. This is a legal notification sent to you as a co-owner because the lender was required to do so. Any refinancing on a jointly owned property requires the consent and signature of all owners of record. If someone attempted to proceed with this application without your knowledge and without your signature, that is at minimum a title defect. He paused. At most, it's fraudulent conveyance. Depending on what was filed and what representations were made to the lender, someone could be looking at criminal exposure. I asked him what my options were. He laid out 3. I could send a formal demand letter requiring the occupants to vacate, backed by my ownership rights. I could file a complaint with the county recorder's office and refer the matter to the state attorney's office regarding the fraud attempt. Or I could exercise my rights as co-owner to force a sale of the property, with proceeds split according to ownership stake. I told him I wanted all 3. He didn't blink. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. By early afternoon, I had signed a formal complaint that Clifford would file with the county on Monday. On the way back to the motel, I called a real estate agent named Lorraine Walsh, whose sign I'd seen in the neighborhood for years. She picked up on the second ring. I told her I had a 4-bedroom colonial I wanted listed immediately, that I was a co-owner of record with full legal authority to list, and that I wanted photography Monday morning and MLS by Tuesday. She said she could do that. I said good and gave her the address. There was a short silence on her end. She recognized the street. Maybe even the house. She was professional enough not to ask questions. I thanked her and hung up. Then I went back to the motel, packed my bag, and called my brother Vince up in Spokane. He answered on the 3rd ring, same as always. Feel like some company, I asked. You bringing fish? Cooler's full. Come on up, he said. I turned off my phone, got in the truck, and drove north. Vince lived in a small house on the east side of Spokane, 10 minutes from the river. He'd retired 3 years ago from 28 years driving freight. Divorced twice, no drama about it, just a man who liked his space and his routines and didn't ask a lot of questions. When I pulled into his driveway Sunday evening with a cooler of trout and a six-pack of whatever I'd grabbed at the gas station off the highway, he came out onto the porch, looked at the cooler and said, "You staying a while?" I said I wasn't sure. He nodded like that was a complete answer and held the door open. We didn't talk about what happened, not that first night. We ate fish, watched the game, went to bed at a reasonable hour like two men who had nothing to prove to anyone. In the morning, he made coffee strong enough to stand a spoon in, and we drove out to a spot he knew on the Little Spokane River and fished until early afternoon without saying much of anything. That's the thing about having a brother who's known you for 57 years. You don't have to explain yourself. He could see something had happened. He didn't need the details to know I needed to be somewhere quiet for a while. I stayed 3 weeks. I thought about Dorothy a lot during those weeks. Not in a sad way exactly, more like a conversation I was still having with her. She would have been furious about the watch. Not because it was valuable, it wasn't, but because she knew what it meant to me. She'd wrapped it in newspaper because we couldn't afford gift paper back then. That was the kind of woman she was. She found a way to make the modest thing feel like the generous thing. She also would have told me I was partly responsible for what happened, not for being generous. For staying too long after the generosity stopped being welcome. She had a way of saying hard things without cruelty. She would have sat across from me at Vince's kitchen table and said something like, "Earl, when did you stop being a father and start being a bill they were waiting to close out?" And she would have been right. I had my phone off for the first 10 days. When I turned it back on, there were 76 missed calls. I sat on Vince's back porch with a cup of coffee and went through them in order. The first ones were angry. Sheila's voice, clipped and hard. "Earl, I don't know what you think you're doing, but you need to stop this right now and call us back." Then Garrett, a voice I barely recognized from a handful of holiday dinners, lower and more controlled. "Earl, this is Garrett. Call me back. This doesn't have to go the way you're taking it. That one I played twice, this doesn't have to go the way you're taking it." A man who tried to refinance a house he didn't own was telling me I was the one taking things in the wrong direction. I set the phone down on the armrest and watched a squirrel work its way across the back fence for a minute before I kept going. Then Nolan the same day. "Dad, there are people at the house taking pictures. The realtor said she's working for you. What is going on? Call me back, please." Then Sheila again, 6 hours later, the sharpness starting to give way to something else. "Earl, we have nowhere to go. You can't just sell the house out from under us. This is where we live." Then Garrett, and this one was different. He'd clearly talked to someone by this point, probably his own attorney, because the threatening tone was gone, and what replaced it was a careful, measured quality that told me he understood the situation had changed. "Earl, I think there's been a misunderstanding about the paperwork. I'd like to talk through it with you directly. Please call me back. Misunderstanding. A man who files a refinancing application on a jointly owned property without notifying the co-owner doesn't misunderstand the paperwork. He gambles that the co-owner won't notice, won't act, or won't have the documentation to do anything about it. He gambled wrong." Then Nolan again later that second day, and this one I had to listen to twice. His voice was different, quieter. The careful steadiness of someone who has been sitting with something uncomfortable for long enough that they've stopped trying to avoid it. "Dad, I know what Garrett tried to do. Sheila told me more than she probably meant to. I should have been paying more attention. I should have said something a long time ago about a lot of things. I'm not asking you to call off whatever you've got in motion. I just need you to know that I know. And I'm sorry, I sat with that one for a while." Lorraine Walsh had sent 4 text updates. Professional, efficient, exactly what I'd asked for. Photography Monday. Listed Tuesday. First showings Wednesday and Thursday. Strong interest from 2 parties by the end of the first week. One couple in particular, a man named Wendell Crawford and his wife Brenda, had come back for a second showing and submitted a written offer. Pre-approved, clean terms. Wanted to close fast. I texted Lorraine back, "Accept a fair offer. I have full authority. Send me what I need to sign." She replied within 20 minutes with a PDF. I signed it at Vince's kitchen table with his reading glasses because I'd left mine in the truck, and I sent it back. Then I put the phone in my jacket pocket, went out to the porch, and told Vince I'd probably be heading back to Boise in about a week. He poured 2 cups of coffee and handed me one without a word. I drove back to Boise on a Tuesday 3 weeks after I'd left. The weather had changed while I was gone. Spring had finally committed. The trees along the highway had that new green that only lasts about 2 weeks before it deepens into summer, and the sky was the kind of blue that makes Idaho worth living in. I had rented a furnished 1-bedroom apartment downtown before I left for Spokane. Lorraine had helped me find it same week she listed the house. Month-to-month basic furniture, a kitchen that worked in a bedroom that was mine and nobody else's. I pulled into the parking lot a little after noon and sat in the truck for a minute looking at the building. Nolan and Sheila were sitting on the hood of their car. They looked like people who had not been sleeping. Nolan had lost weight, the kind you lose when you stop eating regularly because you're too stressed to be hungry. Sheila looked like she'd been carrying something heavy for 3 weeks and had run out of places to set it down. They both straightened up when they saw my truck. I got out and walked toward them without hurrying. Nolan came forward first. "Dad," I stopped a few feet away. "Sale closes Friday," I said. "You have until Thursday to get your things out. Lorraine can give you the exact time." Sheila said, "We talked to an attorney about what Garrett did." Her voice was steady but careful, the voice of someone who has rehearsed what they want to say and is trying to stay on the script. "We didn't know the full extent of it. I want you to know that." I looked at her for a moment. "I believe you didn't know all of it," I said. "I'm not sure that changes much." Nolan took a breath. "I listened to the voicemail I left you, the one where I said I was sorry." He paused. "I meant it. I should have been paying attention a long time before it got to this. I let things happen in that house that I shouldn't have let happen." I nodded. "I know you meant it." "Then why?" he started. "Because meaning it and doing something about it are different things." I said, "You had 14 years, Nolan." I wasn't asking for much. I wasn't asking for anything, really. I just didn't expect to come home from a fishing trip and find my wife's jewelry in the dirt. He didn't say anything to that. There wasn't anything to say. "Garrett," I said, "the complaint I filed with the county is still active. That's in the hands of people whose job it is to look into it. I'm not going to do anything to push that forward, and I'm not going to do anything to pull it back. Whatever happens with that happens." Sheila closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, she just nodded. "Where are you going to go?" I asked. "We have options," Nolan said. "We'll figure it out." "Good," I said. "I'm glad to hear that." I picked up my bag from the back of the truck and walked toward the building entrance. At the door, I stopped and turned back. "Nolan," I said. He looked up. "Your mother believed you were a good man. I believed it too for a long time. I still think it might be true. But that's going to be up to you to figure out, not me." I went inside. The elevator took me up to the 4th floor. I found my apartment, unlocked the door, and walked into a space that was quiet and plain and entirely mine. I stood at the window for a while looking out at the street below. After a few minutes, I couldn't see them anymore. They had gone. The closing was Friday morning, the way Lorraine had said it would be, a conference room at the title company, clean and efficient. Wendell and Brenda Crawford were already there when I arrived. Wendell was a big, quiet man with the hands of someone who works for a living. Brenda was small and watchful and kept a folder of her own paperwork that she'd clearly been through more than once. When I sat down across from them, she said, "We really love that backyard." I said, "The deck's solid. I built it myself about 6 years ago. Used pressure-teetered lumber throughout. It'll last." Wendell looked up at that. "You built it. 32 years in construction," I said. "That house was well taken care of." He nodded slowly. The nod of one tradesman acknowledging another. We signed what needed to be signed. The check was $388,000. I drove up to Coeur d'Alene the following week, rented a small place on the north end of the lake, a 1-story house with a covered porch that faced the water. Nothing fancy, the kind of place where you can sit outside in the morning with a cup of coffee and not hear anything except the lake and the birds and whatever is going on in your own head. I bought a new fishing rod to replace the one that got snapped. A good one this time, not because I needed to spend the money, but because I'd earned the right to buy myself something decent without asking anyone's permission. Dorothy used to say that the people who take the most from you are often the ones who've convinced you that you owe them something. I spent 14 years believing I owed my son a roof over his head. Maybe I did, but that debt was settled a long time before he stood in a driveway and let someone tell me to disappear. I'm not bitter about it. Bitter is a waste of a good morning. Some things break clean and some things break ragged, and the difference is whether you let go before or after the damage is done. I let go late, but I let go. If you're watching this and you've been holding up something heavy for people who stopped saying thank you a long time ago, I'm not going to tell you what to do. You already know, you've known for a while. The only question is how much longer you want to keep carrying it. Some weight isn't yours to carry anymore. Put it down. See what your hands can do when they're free. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below. I'd like to hear what's on your mind. And if you think someone else needs to hear it, share it with them.